former Huskers turning success in sport to success in business. This is Red to Black.
Hey, this is Kieron Williams, and this is how I went from red to black.
Let's dive in. Let's start this thing. Kieron, thanks for being on our show. The show is called Red to Black, and the purpose of this show is to talk to former Husker athletes who have gone on to become entrepreneurs, start their own business, make big waves. And like, you are making a big wave, and you've kind of turned lemons into lemonade over this last year. And we'll get into that because everybody was affected by COVID. You were very heavily affected by COVID, and really for a lot of people might have, really deterred them or stopped them in their career. And you've used it as a catalyst to not only move your business forward, but also make social change. We'll get to all that later in the show. First, I want to talk about your story. Like, you come from Shreveport, like you end up in Nebraska. Talk to us about little Kieron in Louisiana. Were you out slinging lemonade in front of your house? Were you always entrepreneurial?
I wouldn't say I was always entrepreneurial, but I was always looking for that newest thing. I was always looking for what people liked, and I was always kind of trying to be in the know. So whether it was clothes or the newest Mongoose bike or the newest PS4, or I got the GameCube before anybody got the GameCube, which turned out to really be a bust. And then everybody else went and got Xboxes. I went and got a Dreamcast. So I was always kind of the odd one out. And so but I always liked those different things. But football was my thing, and that's kind of what I feel like always brought everything together. Because even though I was an oddball, I was good at football. So they were like, we got to kind of like this kid. So it kind of worked itself out. But originally from Shreveport, Louisiana, was originally committed to Ole Miss, and then tore my knee, kind of lost my scholarships, and then went to the Air Force Academy where I wasn't the most military guy, and it was like, okay, am I going to march, or am I going to go play football? And so got the opportunity to come to Nebraska, and then, the rest was history from there.
That's awesome. So I've known you for a while, and one thing I've always recognized is how hard you work. Is that something that you had to learn, or something that's always been with you early on?
I think I learned just from my family, just from my mom, seeing my mom work really hard, when it was just me and her until I was 7, 8 years old. She would pick me up. She'd pick me up from daycare, and then she'd go to work. And then when she, or she'd drop me off and she'd go to work. So I was always knowing her to be working. Either I was being with somebody and she was working, or when I was with her, I was only for a couple hours and she would go to work. And so that's something that tapped me into saying, okay, well, how can I give it back to her? How can I provide it to her? And then that just turned out to be football. And then after, playing professionally and, having to go through the ranks, and then, not knowing when the next time I was going to be able to get on the field again, I had to take that energy and put it somewhere. And it just so happened to be in my business.
You know what I love about that is that a lot of times moms, sometimes dads, but moms really are like, especially single moms. I don't know if your mom's a single mom or not, but just single moms in general. They're like, I don't get to spend a lot of time with my kids because I'm working 3 jobs, and it kind of not only bums them out, they think they're neglecting their kids, but that's a great example of, she was such a great model for you on working hard to get what you need to do to take care of your family, to take care of your business. And look at what it did for you. I mean, that's an incredible lesson your mom taught you. And she probably didn't even realize she was teaching you that. You're just watching her work hard to provide for you.
Yeah. And then it translates into the game. So I don't know if you've ever watched me in a game, but I try to always give the most energy, most intensity, and sometimes that come in what's called flags. So, but that's just my love, my passion for the game, and trying to always just make sure that I'm giving 110%.
Yeah. You always seem, out of all the highlights I've ever watched of you, you seem like a player's player, like somebody that adds to the team whenever you're around, almost like a spark plug to that team.
Appreciate that.
So talk about how you got to Nebraska. So originally, maybe going to Ole Miss, had a quick setback. What was your journey like to get to Nebraska? Because you came in, and we'll get to this, but you came in under one coach and left under another one, which in the business world happens quite a bit too. Who you're doing business with, or you might be reporting to, or clients. We'll talk about that. But talk about your journey to Nebraska.
Yeah, so I mean, originally was committed to Ole Miss. Ended up tearing my knee, like going into probably like January my senior year. Ended up having to get surgery, tore my quad and my patella, and then all the schools kind of fell off. They were like, well, this guy isn't going to really be the same. He's not going to be able to run the same. I was hearing that from all the doctors, and so my only two options pretty much were either ULM on a full ride or Air Force Academy on a full ride. And so I had the good grades to be able to go to the academy, and I just looked at it and said, well, man, I just really want to get out of Louisiana. So went to the Air Force Academy, was there for 9 months. And then at the end of it, I got the opportunity to transfer. It was either I could go to the Hill or I could transfer. And it was like, well, man, like at the time we were like 2-10 and I'm kind of over marching. I'm like, man, I just want to play football. I want to be good at football again, bro. Like, so, Ronnie Prue, which is kind of like an uncle to me. He's a family friend. He played at LSU when they won the national championship and was coached under Coach Bo. And so he was one of the first people I called when I got the Nebraska offer. And then after that, he gave me the advice he gave me. He was like, man, if you go anywhere else, you're crazy because this man knows defense. Like he knows it. And so I committed, came, and then, the rest was history. I had to, wait my turn and my junior year, I got to play and did really well. And then my senior year kind of had some setbacks. But I think through it all, I learned a lot of life lessons that I still use to this day. You know what I mean? I learned that it's all about the work that you put in. And even when you put in 1,000 hours of work, you might only get one opportunity for that whole 1,000 hours of work. And if you don't take that one opportunity that you get, it doesn't matter how much work you put in or how hard you worked. Nobody's going to feel bad for you if you don't take that one opportunity. It might be 1 minute, but that's the only opportunity that you have. So,
yeah. So, like, talk to us about like what it's like transitioning from one coach to another, because and that happens quite a bit. Like when you're an entrepreneur, you come into one situation and it may drastically change halfway through, whether it's a project or a business. Like talk to us about what that transition was like.
So for me, my freshman year, when Coach Bo, because, I mean, you remember how it went. We beat Iowa at Iowa. Everybody was happy. We were all, feeling good, going into the bowl game, about to go play USC. And then we get a text message that Sunday. It's like, Coach Bo is fired. And, like, you guys can't see him anymore. Like, he can't come to the campus anymore. Like, and I know you remember that whole debacle about like how we had to have the secret meeting. Well, that was, we pretty much had to have that because they told us we can't see him on campus, and everybody's like, well, like, he's my coach. Like, how can I not see him? Like, so that whole thing kind of happened, and or whatever. And so when I looked at it, I had the option to transfer or go somewhere else, but I love Nebraska for what it was, and I knew what it could do if I played well. If I played well here and I did what I was supposed to do, I knew the opportunities that would come afterwards. So I just decided to stay. And it had its positives, it had its negatives, but I think it's just like anything. Like, I think even when a coach does stay, when you have a coach for a long period of time, even guys at Alabama have highs and lows, So I just think it's how you deal with them and your mental capacity to deal with them.
That'd be tough, though, to have them say that you couldn't talk to somebody, whether it's in the business world, if it's your mentor growing up or whatever it is, or a coach, that you're like, okay, he's done. You can't see him anymore. It's like, what? Like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, like, can I say bye?
Right. Like what? That's
can
crazy.
I ask where he's going?
Right.
It's crazy.
So let's shift gears and talk about your business, because it has evolved quite a bit. Like just from what I noticed, just as like, a casual observer, like, it seems like it's taken off quite a bit and like morphed and changed like most businesses do, but a lot in the last year. Like, talk to us about the beginning days of Faking.
Yeah, so 2018 was kind of when the idea formed. It was right after I graduated, and I was like, well, man, like, I just really want to own something. I want to do something. This was in between the period of the AAF in college, so I didn't really get an opportunity NFL-wise for whatever reason, like, didn't really get a shot. And then I kind of bounced around, tryout to CFL team, and I wasn't really sticking because I was a guy that they said didn't have a position. Like, I played really well at safety, but they said they only had a year of tape at that, and they wanted to see me at positions like rover and star and things like that. And I was doing things that I wasn't really used to doing. It was more being a linebacker. And that's kind of like what I was doing in high school. So they were kind of trying to take me back to that. And so I was like, well, you know what? Like, just in case football doesn't work. And since then I have signed a CFL contract. I am on a team now, but in that in-between time, it was like, well, I need to figure something out so I can own something, so I can have less stress about this game and put all of my work and my work ethic into something else while I wait and figure out what's happening with football. And so just created Fake Ink just as an apparel brand. And then Chris Jones ended up wearing one of my hoodies, like one of the first hoodies that I put out. He wore it to a game, and it kind of blew up. And then, you know, kind of we took some time away from it. And then I went and played in the AAF and did my thing there. And then that whole thing kind of fell apart like week 8. We were supposed to play 10 games, didn't even get to finish the season. And I was faced with, okay, am I really going to do this Fake Ink thing, or was that just something to make me some extra money a year ago? But I decided to dive head first into it. I invested all the leftover money that I had from the AAF pretty much into the business, got a bunch of hoodies, got a bunch of wristbands, started really thinking about marketing. Like, I started using the things that I had from school that I learned, you know, in journalism, mass communications. Like, okay, what's my target audience? Okay, how do I get those people? Okay, how do I build a social media following? That's before we had, you know, any of the followers and things like that we have now. And just got super serious about it, and then got an opportunity. Chris Jones, again, my boy, looked out for me. He signed with Vayner Sports. He connected me with Gary Vee, and that was the first person I ever gave my business pitch to, other than myself in the mirror.
I mean, that's a big one. So, like the first Gary Vee, like what?
Yeah. That was like the first, yeah, right? Like the first person you ever pitch your business to is Gary Vee, right? So, but whatever I said, it was a blur. Whatever I said, it worked, because he ended up wearing one of my hoodies on the set of Jimmy Fallon a month later. And then after that, we had like $6,000 or $7,000 in sales, and it just went crazy. And that's when it was like, okay, I really own a business now. And so just really started looking at it, trying to figure out, okay, how can we do this better? What else can we do better? And then we decided in January of 2020, let's pivot to content creation, because I had so many people on the team that were good at making content, and we were just making it for ourselves. And we would make it for people here in their businesses and kind of charge what we would charge, but we weren't really serious about it. We just knew we were good at it. And so we finally said, you know what, let's become an ad marketing agency, bro. Like, we know how to make these videos. We know we can do it social because we did it on our own. Let's start to do it for other people. Yeah. And so just started reaching out to other businesses, and it was organic, and it worked. And now we're here today, and we've been able to work with, you know, the Terrence Crawfords of the world, the Berkshire Hathaways of the world. We've done things with Lululemon. We've done things with Arbonne vice presidents. And I think that just started from just that one idea of saying, okay, let's just pivot. Let's do something different. Not even knowing that COVID was going to come. Like, not knowing that shift to content creation was going to be a need. Yeah. It was just more like, okay, we're good at it, you know? So
what about, talk about how scary that was before Gary Vee, before Berkshire Hathaway, any of that stuff. How scary it was to put everything you had into your idea for a business. That had to be terrifying.
Oh, yeah, it was definitely terrifying, but it was just as terrifying the same day I decided to go to New York to visit, for the meeting with him. You know, he gave us an option of doing it via Zoom or flying out. I only had $750 to fly, and it cost me $825.
Wow.
So I think just all those times of putting it all in added up, you know, to where I could lean back and say, okay, I went all in for this, and it worked. Yeah. I ended up being broke for a couple of weeks, but it worked. This other thing, am I going to go all in on it or not? Because if I don't go all in on it, I'm probably going to regret it. And so we just always just decide to go all in every time. And I think that's added up to us being able to get to where we are.
Wow. That's crazy, man. That's awesome. Congrats.
So let's talk a little bit about...
I'm not afraid of eating noodles every day.
Right?
Right. Yep. You got to be when you're an entrepreneur.
That's right.
So let's talk about the CFL before we go to like kind of the next steps of where like Fake took, because so you signed with AAF, and by all accounts, like AAF was like, they were doing it right. Like taking care of players, like for the fans, they were putting similar like players from the same school on teams. So you're like, hey, I really want to root for like DeMornay Pearsonell and like Kieron Williams. Like, I really want them to like see them play together again. Like, so, and that goes bust. Like, I do have your football card, like in a sealed package in my office. Like one day that's going to be my retirement. So that goes bust. And you sign with CFL and everything is like looking up. Like talk to us about like signing with CFL and then like having it all kind of like put on pause for a little while.
Yeah. So there was an in-between time, like I said, in between the AAF and the CFL. Like, so I ended up the Gary Vee thing happened October 2019. In November he wears the hoodie, and then we pivot in January. So when we decide to pivot, I get dropped from the agency that I'm with. So the agency that I was with ended up dropping me. They were like, you're too old. You don't have enough film. You pretty much have not played for a year at this point. Like, we're going to go ahead and move to other guys. So I ended up really representing myself all the way up until probably about like, what was that, like March, April. And then that's when I got the call for the CFL. And Edmonton, the head guy over at Edmonton was like, Nick was like, hey, we watched your film. Our coaches really love you. The D coordinator really loves you. That's coming in. We'd love to have you on the team. And then boom, I ended up representing myself, signed a year and an option contract. And then COVID hits, like not even like 2 weeks later. So I'm confused because even though this is my first time representing myself, I think I made the right decision, but I don't know. And so ended up making a great decision because even though I lost that year, I still had my option year to pick up. And so it kind of worked itself out. But it was really stressful. It was a hard time because I didn't know where my income was going to come from. And even though I thought it was going to be fake ink, like it's different in thinking it and then seeing that invoice. Right. Those invoice and thoughts are two different things. So,
yep. Yeah. So let's talk about fake ink. So COVID hits. You had this idea that you've been working with for a couple of years, and it seems like fake ink really took a big step forward in like April, May, like over the summer. Like what it sort of seemed like was like a few friends that like loved this brand and like repped it, and then it like really took off. Like I started seeing them all over the place. Like I wore mine and like people like, oh man, like what is that? Like, and people really started to take notice. Like, like, can you talk about like maybe your mindset? Like as you go into summer, you don't have CFL, like, that's at least a year off. Like talk about your mindset and what changed going into the summer with faking.
So, I mean, as we all know, like social justice took a huge step this past summer. And I think that was a big thing just because I've always been a guy that used my voice. And sometimes using my voice didn't always get me in the right places sometimes. But I think using my voice in this instance did. And just speaking up for what was right and speaking up for trying to push things forward and not divide people. And I think just what our brand speaks about, real love, like we're really talking about it. We're really talking about like, it doesn't matter what color you are, how old you are, who you decide to date, who you decide to marry. It's really about who you are as a person and what type of person you are. Are you being good to one another? How are you treating one another really? And I think once we start to put that out to people, with the environment that we were in, we were something that people coddled to because we were a brand that was really about what we were speaking about. When we had the event that we had over 7,000 people come out, and we weren't pushing an initiative. All we were pushing was love. Mm-hmm. And people took from that what they wanted to take from that. But it was, let's talk about what's right. Let's talk about what's wrong. And then let's all come together, white, black, brown, purple, and different, and actually care about each other.
This summer, you organized the Not One More Life March. And when you talk about unity, bringing folks together, I was lucky enough to be at the event and kind of be part of something that was really special in the community and something that I think was really needed at that time. And, as we're talking about Eric Crouch, like Eric Crouch was right there next to you. And to have that kind of support out there, like talk a little bit about like how you came up with the event and really what you're hoping to get out of it and what you think you accomplished with that day.
So the biggest thing, so we all know just like during what happened with George Floyd and just during the world, and I think a lot of the problems that we've seen systemically have always been here, but I just think and I'm not going to say think they've always been here. I know they've always been here, but just with the access that we have to social media today, it connects the world. So now everybody has an opinion and everybody's able to say at one time collectively, hey, this is wrong. So I think when a large group of people and a large enough group of people were able to come out and say, hey, this is wrong, that allowed me to feel as a professional athlete to have a voice. Like, I felt like I've always been that 53rd man on that 53-man roster. And so I can't really use my voice because I'm afraid that the owner might say this or that the GM might say this. And then now I can't really speak how I want to speak. But I think with the platform that we've been given and more guys stepping out in WNBA stepping out, doing what they're doing, LeBron stepping out, doing what he's doing, and then all NFL teams stepping out, I was able to have that confidence enough to say, okay, I really want to use my voice. I want to do it right. And so that led to the idea of having a march that coincided with the Black Lives Matter march. Now, originally the Black Lives Matter march, there was a lot of energy around it, and it wasn't all positive energy. And there was talks of, things coming to a head that day. And once I kind of heard that, I was like, nah, bro, like, that's not even where we're at right now. Like those days before where things were being burned down and all that, like, I don't knock it. Like, to be honest, like, we were years and years away from that happening. But at that moment, like, we were in a time of healing. We were in a time of coming together because, everything had been burned down, but let's not take it another week. Let's actually start getting some action because people are paying attention now. And so my biggest thing was, okay, how do we turn that anger, one, into action, but also that anger into love and bringing people together? And so that's kind of where the Not One More Life, march idea came from. And then we just went to work on it. So I had some help from Virginia Hill, the members of the Black Lives Matter community, students at UNL, obviously Eric Crouch and Ron Brown, and just some local help as well, just with different businesses. And we were able to put that thing on. And I think it accomplished exactly what we were trying to do. It showed that black, white, brown, and different, that we can all come together and just be together and enjoy it and have music and have food and have games. Like, a lot of that stuff I didn't even plan. Like, I didn't know that there were going to be a huge pit out with food for people. Like, I didn't even know that. All I knew was, okay, we're going to bring these speakers out here and we're going to play these speakers as loud as we want, as loud as we can, with gospel music and with different happy sounding songs, and bring these people together. So
that's pretty incredible, man.
It was awesome. Yeah. As a Lincoln resident, Nebraska lifer, it was needed, and we appreciate you putting it together.
I appreciate that.
We try to ask a couple of similar questions to all of our guests, and one of them, it's kind of, I don't know, a couple things. Let me go back for a second because I have a analogy between being on a team and being an owner of a business. And personally, I've been part of a team my entire life. I've never been a business owner until 2 years ago, and started our company, and then we became part of Hurrdat. But one of my biggest challenges was to let things go and not do everything. And how being part of a team, because you can't be the quarterback and the center and the punter, and you can't be all that. You have to trust other people. Was it something that was it easy when you started a business, when you knew you were going to go potentially to the CFL and play? Like, man, I still have this business I have to run. I have to trust everybody else to run my business for me. Was that tough?
Yeah, it was definitely tough. And it was even some times where, like, I had people on my team who wanted to take the idea and build their own business with it. And so I dealt with that. And I dealt with learning. That's where I learned about paperwork, and I learned about agreements and contracts and things like that. And then, I had the idea that, hey, I don't want to miss a step. So I need to put all of these different people into positions. And then that didn't work because then there was too much type of different communication. So I think it just took some time to figure it out. And now we have a good system. We have 5 people that we can count on, or 6 people, including myself. But it just took time to figure out that process. And I think the biggest thing for me was slowing down and not trying to do everything at one time, not trying to put everybody in position at one time, because you want to see that finished product. But sometimes, like, you might only have a good digital designer right now. You might not have a good photographer, but you have a damn good digital designer. So how about you just put that emotion, that energy, that love you're at that time into that digital designer until somebody who is a good photographer or whoever comes into that space, and boom, now you can show them love instead of trying to force these different people into these positions that they probably aren't naturally built for.
That's good advice. Yeah. And what about being part of the Nebraska football community? How has that helped your business? Have you seen it, the fact that you were a former Husker, has that helped your business at all?
So I'm not going to be a guy to sit here and lie. I mean, I put Kieron Williams, former Nebraska safety, in all of my emails. In all of my emails.
Eric,
especially when I first started.
Eric Crouch said the same thing. Eric Crouch was like, come on, man. Eric Crouch, come on.
Like, I mean, it's just a couple words, but those couple words can make the yes or the no. So...
That's awesome. Last question for you. What's next for Kieron Fake Ink? What's the future hold for you?
So right now, we're working with a company over in Spain. I'll actually be making the move over there within the next probably year or so. Like after I get done with this season, I'm going to be over in Spain, just pretty much my whole off season. And then I'll be moving pretty much exclusively to Spain. Working and just still trying to build a business. Like I really want to go international. I just really want to keep growing. I really want to keep growing with the companies that we're working with. So the idea is just growth, continuing to work in the community, continuing to work with the Sienna Francis House, and continuing to work with Thirst Project, and not forgetting that the whole reason that we started was to give back. So that's just kind of what the plan is. I plan on going and balling out, winning the Grey Cup, and then making that NFL dream come true. Because I think a lot of people forgot that I play football, so I think it's time for me to remind people too.
Right? That's something I love about the Nebraska community. Like you said, you always mention it, and you should, because the Nebraska fans, people in the state, love to support their own. And so that's really cool, man. I'm proud of you, and you've done a great thing. You've done some really great things.
Appreciate that.
Yep. Well, we were a fan of yours on the field. We will be a fan of yours off the field. We appreciate the time today. Good luck. Go Big Red. We'll always be here for you, sir. Thank you for taking the time.
All right, love, man. Appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much. And this is the best podcast out right now. Y'all need to tune into it. ASAP.
A Hurrdat Media Production.